All right, everybody. So I like totally blew this thing, which I'm super sorry about. But now we're gonna do this for real. So yeah, if you're watching this and you're like, "What is he talking about?" I started the doing this, and I forgot to turn on my audio, so everybody was like, "What is going on?" So anyway, hopefully some of you folks made it back, and you're watching this one now. So I've got the chat popped open. At least I think I do. Here, let's make sure that I've got the right chat open. And what we're going to be doing, hello, some people made it. So what we're going to be doing is talking about testing and answering your questions about testing. I've had a whole bunch of people ask me questions, and so I thought this would be a sweet time to do that. So if you're unaware, I have a course called testingjavascript.com or at testingjavascript.com that will teach you all the things that you want to know about testing. It's like, I'm super excited about it. I just refreshed the page because we just added some testimonials, and we're going to add a bunch more of these. I've given previews to some people who you may know in the community, and they seem to like this course and stuff. So yeah, let's go ahead and we'll talk about some of your questions about testing. So feel free to throw some comments in here with any questions that you have. While I'm waiting for those, I'm going to go ahead and answer a bunch of questions I have on Twitter, as well as some I got in email. And yeah, so the first question is from Alexander Sorovic. And the question is, from your perspective, what is an acceptable time to execute 1,000 spec testing in your React app? Also, do you agree that unit tests have to be super fast in order to give instant feedback while you are developing, like in watch mode? So I think that the entire test suite is something that I normally only really run on CI, or if it's small enough, then I'll run it before I commit. And so and while I'm committing, I'm able to go do other things. So I'm a little less concerned about like how long it takes to run my tests, and more concerned about like getting confidence that I need from my tests. So I don't really think too much about it. Like if a single test took longer than a second to run or something, then that would definitely be a concern for me. But most of the time it's like a couple milliseconds or something. So I don't think too much about the performance of my tests, because I'm mostly concerned about getting the confidence. So if it's a choice between let's shallow render this thing because it's faster, or let's render this in the entire component because it gives us more confidence, then every time I will choose render the entire thing. And on the topic of shallow rendering, I've got a blog post that explains why I never use shallow rendering, and I recommend that nobody ever use shallow rendering. I think it's a very bad testing practice. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and paste this in here in case anybody wants to comment on that one. Okay, next. So how can I tell what to test in a React app? This is a very common question. How do I know what to test? I think I had a poll. I should have pulled it up the other day, where I was like, what is the biggest challenge for testing for you? In fact, I'm sure I can find it because it's a reply to my pinned tweet. So it's going to be right around here. Yep. What's the hardest part about testing for you? Knowing what to test. So if you're feeling this way, you are not alone. Most people really struggle with knowing what to test. So Ben, what I recommend for knowing what to test is think about your application from the perspective of a user. So if you're using this application and like you're a manual tester or something, and you're tasked with manually testing this component, how would you go about doing that? And what parts of the application would be most important for you as a manual tester? Like your goal is to make sure that what you ship to the user is going to work every time. And excuse me, I've been sick for like 2 weeks, and this is just destroying my talking ability. Yeah, so you would be focusing on you can test the about page, or you can test the checkout page. Which one of those is more important to you? I would focus on the checkout page. Now, eventually, you can test all of it, and that's not a bad thing. That's great to test everything, but Man, sorry, I've got some water here. So yeah, that's fine, but focus on the areas of your app that are like really important and think about testing it from the perspective of user. Because when you look at the code and you're like, how do I test this code? Then often you wind up testing implementation details, which is not a good thing. And in my course, I show you how to go about doing that. I give you some actual examples, so check that out. Okay. So Farzad said, do you have a rule of thumb for reviewing tests and code review? How would you make sure that they're testing enough or covering criticals, especially for different teams with cross-functional members? I don't really have a rule for this. I guess it's kind of like, I mean, if they're, yeah, I don't know. I look at the code, and if it's confusing to me, then maybe the code needs to be redesigned, but not necessarily. Like lots of the time when I'm reviewing testing code, it's like, oh, like this could be tested in a better way, or there's like this test is testing implementation details. There have been a couple on some of my open source projects, especially, that I'll say, yeah, like, or another thing that I'll check for is you have two tests that almost like look almost exactly the same as each other. And so I don't know, like, but the title is different. Like this one's testing one thing, this is testing another, but they look almost exactly the same, just a couple little differences. And so, like, I don't know what is the significance in the differences between this one and that one. What are the important parts of that? So coming in as a maintainer later, that significance kind of gets lost. And so what I generally recommend for that is you say, okay, take the common parts, extract them out, generate data. If that specific data is important, then generate that so you can indicate through code that it doesn't matter what the data is, it just matters that it looks like this. Like pull out as much as you can to make the test only show the thing that it's testing specifically. So I do that sometimes as well. Yeah, I'm not sure if that really answers your question, but hopefully that gets you somewhere. All right. How do you test React components that use Redux for state? Oh, okay. So I consider Redux to be an implementation detail. So I will test my connected React components. If you're using React Redux, the conventional wisdom is to export the unconnected components so that the pure view component, whatever we called these, presentation component. So you export that, and then you test that component in isolation. I think that's fine, but you're not getting any confidence around map state to props or your action creators or map dispatch to props, or like any of your reducers or action creators, and they say, okay, well, yeah, you test those separately. And like, I guess that's okay, but what if I wired things up incorrectly? Like, yeah, maybe I'm using the action reducer, or sorry, I'm using the action creator, but I'm not passing it the right stuff. You can't validate that with tests that are written in that way. So I tend, like, this is kind of more of an integration, UI integration type test, but that's like, I prefer that. So write tests, this blog post about writing tests will give you a little bit more about that. But I really don't think that it's a good idea to like separate your Redux component from Redux because you're severing that connection, and you can't validate that things are working together well. And it's just so easy to test them together that I wonder, like, why wouldn't you just do that? And in my course, I show you, I have like 4 lessons that show you how to do this effectively. So I think you'll like that. Okay, I had 2 of those. Okay, so this one was interesting from Etor, I guess, or Etar, I don't know. So I use Jest for unit tests and Cypress for end-to-end. Hey, that's what I do. Both of them are using React testing library selectors. So I'll just correct a technicality here. React testing library is actually a very small, like 60-line file. Most of React testing library, actually, it comes from DOM testing library. And then there's a Cypress testing library that also uses DOM testing library. So that's where the queries are coming from. So that's where the similarities are. So lots of times some code is duplicated. What about creating and exporting selectors and using them on both sides? Is that an acceptable practice? And they were thinking having like a selectors file that exports where those things are coming from. And that way you can reduce the amount of duplication between the two tests, and your end-to-end tests are agnostic to what the HTML or the page uses. So this I have pretty strong opinions about this. This is actually very similar to the page objects pattern that is common in Selenium-based tests or just end-to-end tests in general. I strongly am against page objects. So page objects are like the thing is, you shouldn't really, like, especially in end-to-end tests, you shouldn't really need to go to a page, like any particular page, more than 1 or 2 times. I mean, or at least not select the same elements more than 1 or 2 times, because that indicates that your end-to-end tests are testing the same things over and over and over again. And so like you test this one page one time, and then and then you can set up your next test. If you need to get through this page to get to another section of the app or something, you can set up your next test so that your app begins in a state that is on that next page. You don't have to click through. So like one mistake that I see a lot in end-to-end tests is people will go to the login screen or the registration page, they'll register a new user, and then they'll go on and go through their tests. But like, if you do that just one time and verify that registration works, then you don't have to register. So you just hit the API directly or have a user in the database or something, and then have that user loaded into your test so you can move on. Doing things the alternate way, where you actually go through all the actions over and over and over again, is one of the reasons why end-to-end tests have the idea that like, oh, they're so finicky or they take so long, is because you're just doing the same things over and over again. So there's that. And as far as sharing code between the two, there's not a whole lot of code that I think would be shared, and you wouldn't be able to effectively do that because Cypress, the querying mechanism is very different from something like in a regular browser or like in JS DOM or in the browser, because Cypress has the Sci object. So I'm not really concerned about the duplication. I like to see in my test, okay, get by label text name, get by label text password, type in this, type in that, click on the login. If I had that abstracted out into another file, that would just be frustrating to me as a developer. So I wouldn't recommend doing this. I don't see any upside, and there's a lot of downside. So there's that one. Okay, I'm almost done with these, and then I'll jump over to your questions who are watching live, and then we can wrap this up. So and I should mention for this last one, in my course, I show you exactly how to avoid going to the registration page every time to register a new user and then log in as that user. I have like a couple lessons that are explicitly present there to help you with that problem, because it's a very common mistake that people make. So check out the testing course. Early bird is on Friday. Woo! Okay, so how do you do end-to-end tests? How are big companies doing it? What's a great way to do it? Libraries, Puppeteer, Nightmare. So I can't recommend Cypress enough. It's just so great. So definitely check out Cypress. Yeah, check out my course, and I'll teach you how to do this. So how to make sure my tests are covering all the edge cases. So I think that so here's the thing with testing is some of us are really good at like looking at code and knowing what to test there, but like and that part is actually kind of the easy part. The really hard part is exploratory testing, where and this is where quality assurance engineers come in really handy. They're really good at this, is looking at the application as a whole and saying, if I do this combination of actions, then that there's a security vulnerability or something like that. It's really hard to test that, especially at a low level, to know that that could happen, because often it's like we have to set up some global state first before we can exploit that vulnerability or like reveal that bug or something. So how do you make sure you're covering all the edge cases? I don't know. Code coverage can help because it can show you what you're not testing specifically in the code. But you have to take a step back and think, okay, like how could the user break this holistically, and then try to reproduce that broken effect in a test, and then you can go and fix that. Hopefully that helps. Okay. So this person can't join the video or the live stream, but they were wondering about testing really database heavy code. So they're wondering if you mock or use an in-memory database or something else. So I actually don't work with database heavy code. Most of the stuff that I work with is either front end or kind of this node layer that proxies to a backend where the database heavy code lives. So I don't do a ton of stuff with database. What I would recommend though is probably an in-memory database if you can like manage that. Yeah, I don't have too much experience to help you there. So sorry. Good luck with that. Okay, cool. So I had two more other questions, then I'll jump into the questions that people are asking on the in the chat. So yes, definitely if you have a question about answers that I've given or anything else that you think of, then ask it in the chat here. So this is Luke Mayhew, I don't know. So they're wondering about like an icon. How do you select an icon so you can click on it? So you have like a delete button or something, you want to click on it and verify that that icon can delete something. So how do you select that? Because React Testing Library and DOM Testing Library, all their queries are about like finding text, or like they have the escape hatch for finding by a test ID, or finding by labels. So when people ask me, okay, how do I find something on the page? What I think about is, how would a blind person find that thing on the page? So somebody who can't actually see any of this stuff, how would they find it on the page? They're going to use a screen reader, they're going to tab around, but even if they were able to tab to your search icon, for example, how would they know that it's a search icon? Well, you should have a label for that icon. So you can have an aria labeled by or an aria label. You should have something in there that would indicate to a screen reader user what this thing is. And that thing is how you can select it with React Testing Library. So if it has an aria label, then you can use get by label text. And then you can select it that way. So make sure that all of your stuff is accessible. This is one of the really cool things about using React Testing Library is that it makes your application more accessible. Hopefully that helps, Luke. Marco, I can't remember where they asked me this question. I just copied it and put it somewhere for today. But here it is. So it's about building, like I'm building something. I don't know how to build it yet. So I'm testing, refactoring, going back and forth. How do I write tests like this? Test-driven development is useless. And so the only thing that can be done is to make the test after whatever I'm building is done. What are your thoughts? That sounds fine to me. In fact, lots of the time I'm building stuff that test-driven development isn't a really good fit for. So I would say, if I'm being totally honest with myself, like at least 70% of the time of the things that I build that like I'm planning on shipping to production, at least 70% of the time I test after. I really don't use test-driven development a whole lot. It does come in really handy sometimes, and in the course I show you how to use test-driven development for UI, which is pretty unique. Most UI you can't really TDD, but with React Testing Library it's actually pretty straightforward, and I show you how to do that in the course. But yeah, if you don't have like the requirements or something ahead of time, you should probably send that back and say, hey, I need requirements before I can make estimates and start working on this. But yeah, with React Testing Library, you can actually take those requirements and encode those into tests. and then you can write those out. Yeah, it's a lot easier to do TDD with UI if that's something that you really want to do, but it's fine to test after, I think. Okay, cool. Sweet. So let's go ahead. I'm going to answer your questions and we'll see what people are asking about. So Ben is saying, I work on a jQuery legacy codebase. Is it possible to test without major refactoring? I've been relying on Puppeteer end-to-end testing, but those are very hard. Yeah, let's see. As everything else is too hard to add. Yeah, that's fine. So that I think that's probably a really great approach to use end-to-end for a legacy codebase. When you have a legacy codebase that's kind of hard to test, the further out you go, the easier it will be to test. Now, the further out you go, there are also other trade-offs that come along with that. Like those tests are slower and they're more finicky. They're a little less nice, but that's a pretty good approach. I personally would use Cypress, and then you should also look into DOM testing library. In my course, I show you how to use DOM testing library with jQuery. With a jQuery plugin, you can adapt that to whatever your needs are. So hopefully that is helpful. How do you choose between JS and TS? So actually in my course, I also talk about static typing. I show how to set up flow, but you can adapt that to TypeScript as well. I strongly recommend that you have some sort of type system for applications that you want to ship to production. They eliminate a huge category of bugs from your code, and that eliminates an entire category of tests that you would probably never have written anyway. So yeah, I strongly recommend using some type system, whether it's TypeScript or Flow. I don't really care either way. Just use one. How do you find the line between unit testing and automated testing? Well, I consider unit automated, but yeah, where's the line between unit and like end-to-end? And do you test a function or both, or like, is there a general rule? Okay, so here, this is a big one. Here is like how I define these things. I actually personally don't care too much about the distinction. All I mostly care about is getting confidence that my stuff is working. But yeah, so how do I, where do I draw the line? So a unit test, you've got a module thing, you clip off all of its dependencies, like all of them, and just test that module. This is really good for functions that are pure functions that don't actually do anything, or sorry, of course they do something, but they don't do anything to the outside world when they're called. So it's really easy to unit test those. So from a purist standpoint, you sever all connection to any dependency and you just test that thing. This is generally not a great idea, I think, because when you sever the connection to any of its dependencies, especially if you're using something like Lodash, I personally would never do that, but like lots of the time people will like mock out these things and just make sure that they're being called properly. I don't think those are super valuable tests. But if it's a pure function that doesn't have any dependencies, yeah, you can unit test that, and it's really nice, really easy to test. So then you have the layer above that is integration tests, and if you look at the testing trophy, testingjavascript.com, here's a testing trophy. So yeah, we've got unit right there. I skipped over static, so we talked about that. We need static testing. That is like ESLint and TypeScript or Flow and Prettier. I talked about how Prettier is a static testing tool the other day on these dev tips. So yeah, that's those separation. Then integration test is where you spend most of your work, and that would be like you take this thing, and as far as I'm concerned, when I'm talking about integration tests, I'm mostly talking about like the front end, and in my course I'm mostly doing like front end stuff. There's not a whole lot of back end. There's a little bit. I show you how to like set up a test for a server rendered React application, or React components that are going to be server rendered. But yeah, most of it is like expecting front end stuff. So anyway, when I'm talking about integration testing UI, I'm still mocking out the backend. So I don't make any HTTP calls. I sometimes will mock animation libraries, so you don't have to wait for those to finish and stuff like that. But for the most part, we're going to be testing components in tandem with each other. We're not going to be mocking as much. And this will get you a lot more confidence for a little less work. Yeah, I find that to be a lot better. Here, I'm going to highlight this so I don't lose it. So then we have end-to-end testing. That's kind of higher level, where it's basically like actually running the entire application. I've got the backend running. You probably want to have like your entire application contained in a Docker container, so you can actually like host that locally, run it all locally and everything. If that's not possible for you, then you can try to like use remote services, which is not as good, but at PayPal, for example, we don't really have a currently, at least I don't think so, a way to package up all of PayPal's services in a Docker container. That'd be like nutso. That'd be so cool, but yeah, we don't have that right now. So we hit actual services. This makes your tests slower and more finicky, but you do what you got to do. So to answer the question, how do you define the line and like when do you test a function? So the way that I do it is like going from top to bottom. At the top, it's like happy path stuff that's like really, really critical. So login works, or like actually I was talking with somebody the other day and I really like this where you do kind of like you pretend you're actually a user actually using the software. So I'm going to register, then I'm going to log in, and then I'm going to click around and do several things. So your tests like can do a lot of stuff. I don't have any problem with especially end-to-end tests. The higher you are, the more stuff your test can do. And our tools are capable of giving us some really good error output so we can quickly identify what exactly was the broken part. Because that's the trade-off that you're making when you do more stuff. It's like, how do you know what's broken? So our tools are getting a lot better at that, especially Cypress. It's so good. So yeah, you kind of do a whole bunch of things in one test that are kind of the happy path for the user. And then as you go down the trophy, we've got integration where we're going to, oh, you know what? I just realized that like my video is hiding this, this thing. So let's beep. We'll put this over in another window here. All right. So yeah, then on the integration level, we can do a couple more sad path things, but lots of this is still kind of happy path, things that like you're not really checking for errors, unless like you have to work with multiple things and then that produces the error or something. But yeah, lots of this is still kind of happy path stuff. The difference between integration and end-to-end, in my mind, is your integration tests are going to run a lot faster. You have a little bit more flexibility with what you can mock, like you can mock entire modules, and you're not actually running the back end, so you can really easily mock the responses. Cypress has a really great mocking mechanism for mocking responses, and I show you how to do that in the course as well. But yeah, I tend to focus mostly, that's why the biggest part of the trophy is integration. I focus mostly on integration. So yeah, then unit tests, this is where you get into like edge cases and stuff like this. It's kind of like blurry lines here between unit and integration in my mind, because I pretty much rarely will sever all communication between modules. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm going to be doing more of my edge case testing. And then your static is going to just cover everything else. So hopefully that answers the question. Maybe you can ask a follow-up question I'll get to a little bit later. So can I ask a non-testing related question, kind of related to one of your previous videos, promise race one? If you ask, maybe I'll answer. We'll see if we've been going for a while now, so we'll see. Okay, what's the recommended testing tools? I advise Jest and Cypress, DOM testing library, React testing library, and Cypress testing library. Prettier, ESLint, and TypeScript or Flow. That's pretty much it. Those are the big ones. And then you have like utilities for different things, but I generally don't use so Lars down here recommends mock redux store. I generally don't use tools like that, like that are mocking capabilities that are published on NPM or something. I'm not a huge fan of those. So those are kind of the tools. Hopefully that's helpful. How do you, I'm not sure what word that is, the importance of testing in yourself. I'm not sure what word that is, so I'm not sure I understand the question. Sorry, Calvin. Okay. Sup? What is up? If you had limited resources for testing a React app, here I'm going to bump this up a little bit so you can see it better. What would you focus on, end-to-end with Cypress or unit and integration with Jest? Yeah. So if I could only write like a handful of tests and I couldn't spend much time on anything else, I'd probably go end to end and I'd write a couple tests that like work through my application. Those are going to run slower. They're going to fail, have more points of failure and things like that. But they're going to give me a huge boost of confidence. Another thing that I would do is I definitely take care of, I take care of the bottom end here as well. So like get ESLint and Prettier and TypeScript or Flow on your code base. Those will eliminate a huge category of bugs that you never need to think about. And then I'd go to the top and I'd work my way down. Yeah, that's what I would do. But try to get them all done. You'll find that when you have this idea that you have a limited number of resources or limited time, and so I don't have time to do any testing. The reality is that once you get testing in your workflow, then you'll realize that you don't have time to not test because it makes you faster. So that's what I would recommend is like try to see if you can get that into your workflow, and then you'll find that you are working much faster. Oh, thanks, Alex. That was nice. Yes, please ask questions. How to implement animation, sliding animation, React. And is Firebase fully secure? Okay, so for this one, I'm not going to answer that question because we're talking about testing, and I'm going to get to the other testing questions. This one's easy. Yes, it is. All right. But you're welcome to ask questions via web code. We're happy to have you here. We're just focusing on testing today. Okay, so how much would you say these principles and the ones in your course apply to testing backend code, like Python, Ruby, Java, whatever? Yeah, so I actually, on Front-End Masters, I have a course that is about like principles of testing, where I teach TDD and like object mother pattern and different things like this. And I remember when I was giving that, like it was really difficult. And I was talking to Mark, the CEO, and he's like, yeah, we've had people try to teach principles of testing multiple times, and it's always like failed. Like we've done it. I think they had done it like 3 times before, and they'd never been able to turn it into a course. And so mine was the first course they were able to, like the first time they were able to make it into a course, but it was just really, really hard. And I think it like barely worked. Yeah, teaching general principles about testing is not easy. However, I do think that lots of the principles that are in the testing JavaScript course or series of courses do teach you principles that you can apply to backend code. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a specific example. Yeah, lots of the stuff about generating data or making your tests communicate to the reader of the test what is trying to be asserted here. So yeah, I think that those principles can apply to backend code as well. Okay. Yep, this is testing only today. Sorry, VWeb code. Okay, what is the URL for the Jest testing course? It is testingjavascript.com. HTTPS, because nothing is good if it's not secure. Okay, I don't know. Just kidding. Great. So my guess is, let's see, is good. Is that good testing practices are good testing practices everywhere? Okay. Yep. All right. Oh yeah. Is there a Babel plugin macros, or some Babel plugin that can allow you to strip data test IDs for production? There is. In fact, if we go to Babel, actually, here, we'll just go to React testing library, the project here, because that is a common question. You might say it's a frequently asked question. So we'll go to the frequently asked questions. I really don't like test IDs. I want to get rid of them. There's a simple Babel plugin here. Babel plugin remove properties, and you can configure it to remove like data test ID or whatever other properties in it. We'll just strip those out. You'd want to do this for production only, but yeah. So my thoughts on this. I think that you can do that if you want to. My question is, why would you want to? So mostly people are concerned about the bundle size. that's like, I think that's the only legitimate concern. That some people are concerned about performance, like memory or something. Neither one of those are at all concerning to me. Oh, hey, thank you for that 5 pounds. That was nice. Yeah, that's super nice. It just makes my heart feel warm. Thank you, Ross. So people are concerned about performance or bundle size. I think that it's not adding a whole lot to your bundle size. I think that it's totally worth taking or just shipping that stuff. And the reason for that is because it can be really useful for being able to run end-to-end tests on production, or at least some of them, kind of these smoke tests that just tell you if there actually is a problem. So yeah, I would recommend keeping them in, but if you really want to remove them, then you can use, here, I'll copy that and paste it for you. Use that. So great question. Can you give us a preview about what the course will cover? Here, let me see. Yeah, here are the topics, or the modules. So we got JavaScript testing fundamentals, mocking fundamentals, configuring Jest. Okay, so this one is a huge course. It's like 30, I don't know, I can't remember exactly. Lots of dense videos, and you have to keep in mind that these are all what you're like used to with Egghead style. That's very dense, short, to the point. There will be lots of extra material as well, like very awesome enhanced transcripts, so that you could, if you don't like video, you can just basically read the blog post version of the video. It's just amazing what so Egghead is helping me with this. What they're coming up with is very cool. But yeah, so this configuring, like, this is a very typical production application with weird Webpack loaders and using ES, like the dynamic import syntax and stuff like that, how you configure Jest for all of that. So I strongly recommend that. Static test analysis, I think that one's actually probably number 3 or something. I can't remember what order we've got these in. But yeah, static analysis testing, ESLint, Prettier, and Flow. And then testing React components. This one's also very big. Lots and lots of situations. We got React Router in here and Redux, and I show you how to, and also like in here, I show you how to create your own custom render method based off of React testing libraries render method, so that you can render it with the Redux store provider and the React Router provider and a theme provider, so that you can just render all of your components and not worry about what providers they need. And yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, so it's very good. There's test-driven development in here. There's, yeah, lots of really good stuff. I think this one's last. It's a bonus. So yeah, then we've got testing applications with Cypress. This one's like 17, maybe 20 lessons long, 5 minutes each. All about like, here, let's install it, let's configure it, let's write our tests. Let's make sure that we don't test the same thing twice and make our tests take forever. And yeah, just lots of really good stuff here. I show you how to install the React developer tools in Cypress. So you can use Cypress, like right now today you're using Chrome or something to build your application. I show you how you can swap Chrome for Cypress, and you can do all of the same things that you love about Chrome in Cypress, but then you can also write Cypress tests to get you in the state where you're currently working. I call it Cypress-driven development. It's really great. And then testing with any JavaScript framework using DOM testing library. So I've got like Angular, AngularJS, jQuery, and even some things that are like totally, well, there's Vue, and then some things that are totally unknown, like from HTML, which is this interesting thing. But I show you generally how you accomplish this. I think there are like 11 of these, and so that you could do it for whatever framework you're using. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. And then you get all the benefits that we love from React testing library in whatever framework you're using. Yeah, there's like Dojo and stuff like that. It's cool. So yeah, hopefully that's fun. I lost it. Have you found, let me see. Okay, there we go. Why is testing important, and what is testing? So VWeb, that is a great question. That's what I will be answering in the JavaScript testing fundamentals. Testing is like when we're talking about automated testing like we are here, it's where or let's take a step back talking about manual testing. So you've got an application that you're building, and every time you make a change, you want to make sure you didn't break anything, so that when you ship that to production, people who are using it don't have a broken application. And so like as you do this and as the application grows, it takes you longer and longer to go verify that you haven't broken anything because you have more points of failure, more things that can break. And so to combat this, we try to automate as much of that as we can by writing software that tests software. So that's what testing is. That's why it's important, is because it frees you up. You can get confidence that your software is not broken without spending a ton of time going to manually check that you haven't broken anything every time you make a change. Okay. So, yeah, answer that one. Have you found a screenshot compare testing useful in a live project? Yes. Okay, so I haven't actually done this, but if I had time, the number one tool that I would look into is Applet Tools. And they just barely released support for Cypress IO, which is like so cool. So I have an interview that will be available as part of this course, where I talk with somebody about Applet Tools and what it is and how it works and why it's important. But yeah, basically what it does is you set up your application in a state, it takes a screenshot of it, and well, the way that it works is kind of really cool, but effectively it takes a screenshot of it, and then the next time you run the test, it'll take a screenshot of that, and then they'll compare the two and see if they're different. So this is not a new thing, it's been around for a long time. But the cool thing is with Applet Tools is that they actually do the screenshotting in their service, and they have AI, artificial intelligence, that will determine like if it's just a couple pixels or like you can set thresholds on what's important, because sometimes different browsers will render pixels a little differently. You can set parts of the page that are irrelevant, or just this is the part of the page that's relevant. You can say this is dynamic content, but it does need to have content. You can do a lot of really amazing stuff with Applet Tools. I'm very bullish about Applet Tools, having never actually used it before. I think it's awesome. The other really cool thing about Applet Tools is that with Cypress, currently it only supports running in Chrome. But soon, eventually it's going to run in Firefox and in Internet Explorer, even in Edge, all these other browsers. But like, just think about the task of testing, like running your tests in all the browsers that your users are using. You've got every variant of mobile browser, every variant of desktop browser, and different versions of those browsers. So pretty soon you've got like a silly amount of tests that you have to write. Oh, I just noticed that Nejic Vokovic sent me money, and that was really nice. I just want to say thank you. That's super nice. So like you have a silly number of browsers you need to test, and that's great because you're getting confidence that it will run in all those browsers. But like, and maybe a couple of years ago that would have been more valuable, but the percentage of confidence increase by running it in all those browsers is actually pretty small in my mind. I don't think that there's a huge amount of confidence increase by running these tests in all those browsers. So what Applet Tools can do is you run your tests, your Cypress tests in Chrome, and then what it does, like technically, is it'll take the DOM and the CSS and all the images, everything, it'll package that up and upload it to Applet Tools server, and then Applet Tools will load that up and take a snapshot of that. But it'll load it up in every variant of every browser, and it's very, very, very fast. So you just have to run your test one time, and you get a lot of confidence that at least your CSS and your HTML in the state that it is today is going to be applied in all of those browsers, which gives you a little bit more confidence for no extra work, basically. You don't have to do anything extra. It doesn't take any extra time. And then like on top of that, you get the visual regression testing that Applet Tools gives you, which I think is fantastic. It is a paid service. I do have access to it. I just haven't had the time. I've been a little bit busy. But yeah, like I'm very excited about Applet Tools. So I'll just copy a link here. You can check that out. I think it's fantastic. Okay, cool. Gray green screen. Yeah, so Joel Hooks of Egghead sent me this. He was like, hey, you need to have something that looks a little bit better than what you have. like with the backgrounds and whatever. So he sent me this. But yeah, it is gray. I was kind of hoping he'd send me a green one so I can just make everything disappear. So I'm probably gonna buy a gray or a green screen, and then I can just be my head. I think that'll be cool. Okay, so yeah, I just answered Anthony's question. Hooray! I appreciate you're doing promoting testing and starting coding with Node and Express. Which approach and testing tools are most effective? Test apps in Node. So on the testing JavaScript course that I have, I don't talk about testing. Well, I do talk about testing Node a little bit, but I don't give any real examples of testing like an Express server. Let's see, the course materials. So one of the, yeah, here it is. One of the projects, so I've got several projects for all of these. One of them has a server aspect to it. It's Jest, Cypress, React, Babel, Webpack. And this one, it is tested, but I don't show these tests in the course. And they're only sort of an okay test. The server is like really, really simple, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend testing exactly like this, but this is pretty similar to how I can set up my backend tests and how I test those. So you can look at this as an example. If you want a more like thorough example, then you can go to my front-end masters testing workshop repository. And in this one, I do have a more thorough backend test setup. And in the front-end masters workshop, I actually do show you how to test the backend. So if you want to get into backend testing, you can go check out front-end masters. I don't really do that in this course. Do you suggest use of TypeScript as the static test piece of the trophy? Yes, if that's what you want to use, then that's great. In the course, I show Flow, but no. Jake likes this format. So do I. Thanks. I'm glad that people actually showed up so I could answer some questions. Just a quick thanks. Oh, thank you, Adam. That's nice. How to start a test culture where I work. Some advice. So it starts with you, and you start testing, and you kind of evangelize it. You show how it can improve your workflow. I think it's actually kind of a little difficult or tricky to convince people that testing is a good idea. But one thing that is really helpful is if you can convince the business that testing is a good idea, and then the business can give you some I don't know, some credence, give the engineers some time to learn it, like maybe pay for all the engineers to have maybe a testing course, I don't know, to learn testing. I'm being cheeky. Yeah, so that might be helpful. Hopefully that helps. But lots of it starts with you and your example and kind of evangelizing it yourself a little bit without being super annoying. Some people find testers are like fanatics and stuff, and that's not very fun. Okay, Anthony, my friend, is asking, would you write any tests for security concerns like cross-site scripting or CSRF? What is that? That's cross-site request forgery in any part of the testing trophy. Yeah, that's a good question. So the weird thing about this is like once you've fixed it, then you like with security concerns, if you know that it's there, then you'll fix it. And yeah, I don't know. So lots of tests are testing. This is an interesting topic. So lots of tests are testing the business logic, making sure that it's doing what it says it's doing. But then there's another category of tests that say it's not doing this. So in some of my open source projects, I'll have a test file that's just bugs that have been reported. And if somebody wants to report a bug, they just add another test that reproduces that bug. And so I could see cross-site scripting or cross-site request forgery type tests going into a file like this. As far as what part of the testing trophy I'd put that in, I'd try to get it as close to the module with the problem as possible. So if it requires doing many things, then maybe that would have to be an end-to-end test. But if you can test that closer to the module in a unit test level or something, that'd probably be good. Sorry, my son is coming in the room. 1 second. All right, yeah, this one is a little bit longer than normal, and my kids are like, "Hey, Dad, let me show you this thing." My 3-year-old learned how to take a Lego and unlock my door. So that's fun. I would much rather be interrupted by my kids than by a coworker who just wants to tell me about the football game on Saturday that I don't care about. So there's that. Remote work, it's the best. Okay, so when you state, so rather than dealing with instances of render React components, your test will work with DOM nodes. What are the actual drawbacks of testing against instances? So a common practice that I see in React tests, especially if you're using enzyme, is you'll grab the instance and then you'll call a method on it because it's your handle click or something. And that's fine, you get coverage on that function, but you're not testing a use case, you're testing code, which could, like that, your code could break without breaking the test. That's the real important thing here, is when you test implementation details, there are two things that happen. You could break the code without breaking the test, or you can break the test without actually breaking the code. What I mean by that is you refactor it, you rename the function, or yeah, that'll do it. And so I avoid implementation details in my tests because of those two reasons. And so working with actual DOM nodes, instead of calling that handle click method on the instance, I'm going to click on the button, and that if it's not wired up properly, then that test is going to fail. Whereas if I just call the function directly, if it's not wired up properly, it's still going to pass. So you get a lot more confidence by testing without testing implementation details. Hopefully that's helpful, Jonathan. Okay, do you find Mocha and Chai faster than Jest? Nope, I don't. Okay, I should clarify that. If you have just a few tests, like 3 or 4 tests, or even like 50 tests, Mocha and Chai actually, I found it to be faster than Jest. But Jest is really, really fast on bigger test bases. As you get bigger, it becomes much more fast. I've actually got a migrating to Jest. I got this blog post where I talk about how I migrated my team from Mocha to Ava and then to Jest. It was kind of a nightmare. And yeah, so you can read that. But basically, it's a lot faster with bigger test bases. But more than that, Jest is a testing platform. And it can do a lot more. I even have Jest running my linting, which has a lot of really great implications. So lots of people are using something like lint staged to only run linting on the files that are actually changing. And so that's really cool. But what if you like have a linting thing that will check that your imports are correct, and you move a file? Well, all the files that are importing that thing, they're not being changed, so they won't be linted on that commit. That's not very helpful. But with Jest, it will track all the files that use that file and run linting on all of those. So yeah, Jest is more of a testing platform. It also has built-in assertion library, built-in mocking capabilities that are really, really good, an amazing watch mode. I show you some really awesome plugins that you can use with the watch mode that are just fantastic. The ability to run multiple Jest configurations in a single test run with projects, and I show you how to do that. So there's just so much that's so awesome about Jest. In fact, I'm wearing my Jest shirt today because I love Jest. It's awesome. So yeah, I have no reason to use any other testing framework for tests that can run in Node. Okay, I'm testing Material UI with React Testing Library. Woo! When I try to select a submit button by text, it finds the span tag, any suggestions beside test ID. So it should find that, like, if you find a span tag within there, you should still be able to interact with it. You should still be able to click on it, and that quick event should bubble up to the button where it should work. If that's not working, then open an issue, because that should work. How do you test Redux? Scroll back on the video, and I answered that question a little bit earlier. And I do talk about in the testing course how to test Redux. Okay, how many more of these do I got? Nikes. Oh, people are being nice. Thank you, Anthony. Water on me. Thanks. Okay. So, thanks. I don't know who that is. Mike. Thank you, Mike. Wow, people are being so nice today. Yeah, we'll just keep on going. This is taking a fair amount longer than I expected, but I'm just glad to be answering your questions, and you're all being super nice. Okay, so our QA team is writing API tests to verify expected data is returned given certain required payloads. Do you think it's necessary if there is sufficient end-to-end coverage? I think that's probably a good idea. Yeah, it's probably a good idea. Your end-to-end tests are probably not going to be covering all the things that your QA team is going to be covering. And what that also means is that you probably need fewer end-to-end tests. And so, yeah, I think like trying to find the trade-offs between those two, I think that would require some thought. What am I actually getting? What coverage am I getting from my API tests? What do I need to get from my full end-to-end tests? Yeah. If there are multiple front ends hitting the same API, then I think that's useful. I would definitely say keep doing that. Okay, not testing related. If you have time or can look at it, thanks. Okay, I'm not sure if that was a question, but you're welcome. Do you program also backend? No, I don't really do a lot of backend. I do some. At PayPal, everybody's full stack, all the JavaScript engineers. And I have definitely written like production code at PayPal, that's backend code. Most of the time, though, I like to spend in the front end or in tools with Node. I do a lot of tooling work with Node, but yeah, I never really got a huge kick out of backend development. So yep, that's an answer to that question. I have sample code but can't post it here. Sorry. Okay. Want my login to return a promise. So I can put request hold until the user logs in. I'm not sure where the question resides in there, but yeah. Okay, one question about your new course on testing. When will it be available? Will it cover something more than your courses on testing from YouTube channel? Yes. So some people aren't aware of this, but lots of what I do openly and in public. So you check out my YouTube channel. Lots of my workshops are on there and just free in public. So there are benefits to actually buying my material because it's edited and there's a lot of like auxiliary material as well that is exclusive to the purchased stuff. But yeah, if you're in like a third world country, you don't have a like there's the your dollar doesn't go as far or something. Then I have a lot of stuff that is freely available on my YouTube channel, and I want you to watch it. So as far as when it will be available, so if you go to testingjavascript.com and go here, you'll get notified. The early bird starts on Friday, so look forward to that. Yeah, so it'll go through the weekend, maybe partway through next week. The official launch date is the 25th. I don't know if I'm supposed to tell you that, but that's when we're launching. So get excited. Woo! Sweet. So as far as will it cover different things? So yeah, like I said, lots of my stuff is available on YouTube, but there's definitely way more content in this course. I've never done anything so huge in my life. It's taken like a lot of time, like years of experience actually testing, and then 6 months of working on this course. It's huge. Oh, thanks, Lars. Are these courses available on Pluralsight? No, they are not. Pluralsight, I have mixed feelings about. Maybe I should share them, maybe I should not. So Pluralsight makes authors, at least typically, they make authors sign a non-compete, which basically means you can't teach this same stuff for money anywhere else. That is like so not good. I do not like that. It's really frustrating. So Pluralsight changed that policy. It's really dumb, really stupid. So Egghead, on the other hand, the agreement you sign is you, the content creator, own all of the content. And if at any time you decide you want to pull it off, it's yours. Go ahead and pull it off. You can tell us not to show it anymore. It's all yours. You can put it anywhere else. I could take all of my stuff and put it on YouTube today if I wanted to. I really like that model. I like ownership. I created the content. It's mine. So yeah, I'll never, I'm technically a Pluralsight author. but only by virtue of the fact that I created a course on front-end masters that, and then front-end masters kind of syndicates that through Pluralsight. But that's the only way I'd ever do that. I'm not signing any non-compete agreement. That is really stupid. Thank you. I'll take my water though. Thank you very much, Ross. All right. This person's applying for a job. They made a Trello clone, Slack clone. Wow, my goodness. Do you think it is good for entry-level job? If you made all that stuff, I think you should be working for money by now. Definitely. So good luck. In C# I sometimes use the test data builder pattern to take my test setup, to make my test setup more readable and flexible. I haven't seen this in JS. What are your thoughts? I actually talk about this in testingjavascript.com. So let's see, where'd my list of tests or my stuff go? So yeah, right in here, in testing React, and actually in here as well. I talk about, oh, where'd my thing go? Oh, that's right, it's right here. So yeah, in those two courses, I show you how to generate data. I think it's actually a really great pattern. I don't have something quite like this. I feel like that chaining API is a little bit maybe confusing. I would just pass that as arguments here. But I totally think this is a great idea because what it shows is it says this just needs to be an account with all the normal properties of an account. But the important part to this test is that it needs to have a credit of 123 and a debit of $1. And that's what's important to this test. So if you didn't do that, you'd have to have this big account object for every one of your tests. And most of those account objects look the same. So it's hard as a maintainer to know what part of these tests is unique. What's the important part of these tests? And so by packaging that up into like a data builder, this data builder pattern, you can signify this needs to be an account, and here are the two properties that are important about this account for this test. So really strong yes from me, Anthony. Yeah, can we add Redux to it? I'm pretty sure Redux, you can do that too. It's great. Some things with React Native. No, I don't do React Native myself, but there is a React Native testing library, which was recently released by my friend who is actually also a core maintainer of Jest, Michal. I'm not sure how to say his name actually, but he's a great person. And he worked with, he asked for my feedback. I didn't really do much here, but he asked for my feedback on his React Native testing library, which follows much of the same ideas behind React testing library. So we've got a fire event, we have a render that gives you some queries that are really useful. So yeah, if you're using React Native, then use React Native testing library, and you can still get the course, and you'll learn all about like how to write your tests appropriately. Lots of this stuff will translate. You'll just be using React Native testing library. The release date for the course, I said earlier, it's early bird is the 19th, so this Friday, and then on a week from this Friday, on the 25th, is when it's officially released, which is incidentally, and not on purpose. In fact, I kind of wish it wasn't, but that's going to be the same day that ReactConf is, and there's going to be a big deal about stuff at ReactConf, so you want to live stream that. Don't miss that. It's going to be great. But yeah, that's the same day. You can watch my course later. Buy the course during the early bird, watch it the next week or something. And share it with your friends. Okay. So I wanted to test a React select dropdown auto suggest component with React testing library. Should I mock the suggest dropdown? I would suggest not mocking the suggest dropdown, and the reason is mocking it will be quite difficult, I think, with any degree of fidelity. And so, yeah, I would strongly recommend not mocking the dropdown. Also, you might consider looking into downshift, which I wrote and I think is good. What did Kent Beck say about the testing trophy? Is that in the course? I actually never asked Kent about the testing trophy, but I did interview him for about 20 minutes to maybe 30 minutes. Maybe actually, I think I did a little longer. I can't remember exactly how long it is, but that will be available as part of the course. So you can see that interview. We had a very interesting conversation. Yeah, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but yeah, it was pretty cool. Kent Beck is, so if you're not familiar, Kent Beck, like, invented extreme programming. He also he says he rediscovered test-driven development, but like as it is today, he invented test-driven development for all intents and purposes. So yeah, he's kind of a big guy in the testing world. So very, very cool conversation. What was the answer to the same problem before Cypress came along? Selenium. Yep. You don't need to look into it though, because Cypress exists and it's great. Hey, thank you. That was nice. Reducing tests is a good idea. Oh, yeah, I agree. Have a file that is like, here are the bugs that we found. Let's reproduce the bug in this test, and then we can write out that, solve that problem, then that bug never comes back again. Do you run your tests in Selenium Grid via Kubernetes? If yes, can you elaborate on your setup tips, handling lost connections to pods and stuff? I actually know nothing about Kubernetes. I also don't use Selenium, and when I used Selenium in the past, I didn't use. In fact, I don't know how long Kubernetes has been around, but it's been a couple of years since I used Selenium. Yeah, so I don't. I mean, technically, so PayPal is using Selenium. I do use Selenium sometimes. Yeah, so yeah, no, the answer to your question is no. So I can't really elaborate on my setup. Sorry. Kudos to the young one. That's an interesting skill to learn. Yep. So our doorknobs, they're like just privacy locks. So they're just like this little slat and you can turn the thing pretty easily. But yeah, he's like 3 years old to figure out how to do that. Oh, thanks, Anthony. Okay, would it be better if we get together and down a beer too? I actually don't drink alcohol, so there's that. Makes it interesting when I go to conferences and stuff where that's such a big deal. Yeah, we got to start the testing young. Hot chocolate, yes, it is winter time. I'm excited. Mine helped me with the bug hunting last week, but a year or two, she'll start writing some code. Yeah, kids are the best. Is there a set of questions you ask yourself when you think about designing a set of tests for a feature? Mostly my question is, how would I test this if I was a user manually testing it? That's the biggest question that I'm asking. Also, another question is, what's really important that I don't break? If I come in and add tests later, the first test that I write is what I call a sanity test. I try to avoid, yeah, anyway. So it's just basically like the happy path for that component or whatever, that feature, to make sure that the expected case works. And then and that'll have a whole bunch of assertions in it. And then the rest of my tests don't need to have any of those assertions because I've got that one. Yeah, there's not really a set of questions, but those are some of the things I'm looking at. Thank you, Jake, and thank you, Adam. That's nice. Okay, I finally reached the bottom. Okay, I'm testing a different JS framework, not React. Could I still benefit from the course? Absolutely, Mike, you could. Lots of the principles I talk about are really valuable, and I show you how to test any framework with DOM testing library. So all the things that you're learning about testing React components, like most of them, 99% of them, will be applicable if you can build your own render method with DOM testing library. Because the really nice thing about not testing implementation details is that you can take like it doesn't matter how you're rendering your component, whatever, as long as it's like this thing, you put it onto the page. From that point on, all of your assertions, all of your interactions, everything should be exactly the same. And if it's not, then you're testing implementation details of your framework. And so, and lots of people will kind of butt against me and say, hey, wait, no, like, isn't that testing or aren't you just testing the framework at that point? Yeah, okay, maybe I am testing the framework, but I'm getting confidence that my application works. And so that's all I really care about. And the nice thing is, because I'm not testing implementation details, if the framework comes with a huge new feature or something, I don't need to change my testing framework to support this new feature, which is something that Enzyme has really struggled with the new context API and other things. They always had to keep up. But with React Testing Library, any new features that come along now or in the future, you just keep on using React Testing Library and things continue to work because we're not testing implementation details. And the same thing applies, like all of the things that you're going to learn using React Testing Library. If React falls out of favor and something else becomes more popular, or you just move to another company or you change projects or something, you can still take all those things that you learned about testing and apply them to your new thing, because you can use DOM testing library to render. You render your thing and then use DOM testing library to hook up some queries for it. So yeah, definitely. If you, and in fact, that's a really important point I want to get across. If you're not using React, people should still buy this course. It's a testing JavaScript applications course. Great question, Mike. Thank you. Yep. What's the hardest test you've ever written? Oh, snap. I think the hardest tests I normally write have to do with, I don't know, things that require positioning. Because like in JS DOM, we don't have support for get bounding client rect or whatever. I can't remember what that API is called. So like there's no layout in JS DOM. So if you were testing some layout thing, you can mock out things and try to like downshift does this a little bit. Before I added Cypress to downshift tests, it relied on this, and it's a bit of a mess. I don't like doing that. And in fact, we took that code that was doing all that stuff and we extracted it. And, well, somebody built something. I don't think it was for downshift. It was like a polyfill for an upcoming browser feature. Now we're just using that polyfill, and we don't have to test that anymore. But yeah, that was a real pain. So normally I wouldn't test stuff like that in JS DOM or in Node land with Jest. I would test stuff like that in Cypress now. But yeah, that was a real beast. There have been some backend tests that I've written too that were really, really hard. Because most of the time when it's hard to test something, it's because the design of the code is not good. And we had like this thing that had millions of dependencies on lots of different things, and just to imagine mocking those things was very, very difficult. Okay, Anthony is asking, have you witnessed a culture when devs, QA, business analysts, right, BAs, and product team collaborate together on defining acceptance tests before development starts? I sort of had that at my last company. I had what was he? He was like, I guess he was a business analyst role. He was like not the manager, but yeah. And then I had the QA guy come over, and we sat at my desk, and I just wrote out a list of tests. I said, okay, so this, I can't remember what the component was. It was an Angular thing, but I said, so this thing needs to do this, that. We sat at my desk and went through those tests. It was awesome. It made development of that feature so much easier. So I definitely recommend doing something like that. That was really, really helpful. Okay. What timestamp did you talk about testing Redux? Sorry, I don't know. You'll have to scrub through. In fact, if somebody wants to do me a huge favor, when we're all done here, go through and like make a table of contents of all the questions and topics. That would be like a huge help. So thank you if anybody does that. So yeah. So is it a good idea to use selector functions to access state and test those instead of a reducer for test flexibility? I suggest, earlier when I answered that, I suggested no. Redux is an implementation detail. Test your components. Make sure that they are connected to Redux properly. Do I ever use BDD style given when then a la Cucumber? So I have used Cucumber in the past. It was early in my career, and I was pretty confused by it. The thing I don't like about it is it's just a pretty big layer of indirection and abstraction that makes tests hard. Like maybe they're easy to read a little bit, and like business people can write them, sort of, but like to maintain those tests is really, really difficult. So I am not a huge fan of the BDD style of testing. I think it's kind of confusing. Okay, I finally made it to the end. If anybody has any last minute questions, I will give you a couple seconds to do that. Otherwise, I will just say really quick, thank you for watching. Please do subscribe. So this actually subscribes you to my newsletter, which I send emails. If you are already subscribed to that newsletter, you don't need to put this in. This just puts you on my newsletter. Something to know about my newsletter, I am sending out more emails more frequently over the next 2 weeks because of the course. If that bothers you, feel free to unsubscribe. I'm sorry that bothers you, but I'm not sorry enough to stop doing it. So yeah, so you'll be getting a lot more emails from me over the next 2 weeks. about the course, and the stuff that I'm sending isn't just like promotional stuff. It's like actual useful things. Like I talk a lot about, this last one was about mocking and stuff, and I show you examples and things to do, not to do. So it's valuable stuff, and then you'll also get the updates on the course and stuff. After the 25th, I'm actually taking off. I'm going on a cruise with my family, and so you will not hear much from me after that point. And when I come back, I'll probably have like a big list of things to look at, which will be fun. So anyway, let me just check. We've got a couple more questions. Why React Testing Library over Jest plus Enzyme? So it's not Jest and Enzyme versus React Testing Library. It's Enzyme versus React Testing Library. Use Jest with both of them. But introducing React Testing Library. So check out that blog post, and you can learn some interesting things about why I think Enzyme is not a good idea and why React Testing Library exists. Here, let's see. I think there's a React Testing Library. Let's see here. So if we go to the fact below, what about enzyme is bloating? And so I explain it in the FAQ a little bit too. So check out the FAQ on the repo. Okay, that's it. No more questions. We're done. This was fun. Thank you, everybody. Oh, I accidentally clicked on exactly the wrong thing. Yeah, actually it was the right thing, but now I'm going to click it right now. So thank you so much. We'll see you all next time. Oh, actually, sorry, one last thing. If you go to kcd.im dev tips, then you'll see my schedule for my dev tips. Oh, and here I'm gonna move my video. What? Here, and I'll just restore it to its former glory. That's where I normally put it. So tomorrow I'm going to be talking about demystifying testing. I wrote a blog post about this recently. You can go read that, but we'll be talking about that tomorrow. Yeah, and then I've got the title to be updated. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. So yeah, keep up with that. Oh, and if you want to not forget, then you can go here and click on set reminder, beep, and YouTube will remind you. Okay, cool. I'm going to take off. This was fun. Thanks, everybody. I will see you all later. Goodbye.